whatever reason, I did not know what informed those decisions prior, even though, of course, you take part here and there, but you're not actively engaged in partisan politics. But it has been a mindset that has been established in the Gambia long before today, that people make us believe that political, you know, you have a career, you have this, you have that, so don't get into partisan politics. Now, that thought that has shaped society for long has made us believe that politics is just for a certain class of people. And it has been reduced to a point that we realize in our country that we've been ruled by the worst of society. Now, being ruled by the worst of society only tells one thing. The worst are more determined to rule than folks who basically think they just need a job to keep on with life. And they don't need to say anything about the country. They just need to be, in one way or another, self-protectionist. But ni nata na banko jiben no bi. Kuja malebe kere meni alonko walnin tilingo nin tonya manta. Yo tilimbali ala meni alonko walebe kere. You would never know until your own family is involved. Then you see how our systems are built and, of course, how systems operate. But that is not the focus of this conversation. Today, I just want to look at the opposition in the Gambia and the kind of politics they play. And walonko to me alonko akumata bake dobija balafaka wara bake, but akumata to have a conversation on. No matter how difficult it is, we need to have those very difficult conversations. We need to do reflective thinking, and we basically need to look at where we got it wrong from 2016 to where we are today and what basically the future holds. We cannot distort history, and we cannot change the narratives from just what has passed in recent times. First, I would just focus on the coalition building processes and as well the comments and commentators and kind of things and rhetorics you hear from them. But I'd not be there more than Banyo Minka nice because I would have to look at first na uncle. And again, Pamani, I'm not sure, you know, but, you know, all from Lower Nomi, you know, we would be in a way or another, you know, distant relatives. But of course, Bayo Sonko is my personal uncle. You know, Katu. Ntolete mbadi ngolo doyala jang, omuku kilinati, mi alonko everybody got to know. Na kuntuta manta fujongo mamfenso do mintambite badi ngolo. And whatever differences or divergence in opinions you got with people, the most important thing is to respect people for what they believe in and what they choose to do. And that is diversity and that is democracy. But the consistent or persistent opposition throwing jabs at each other only strengthens the incumbent. Wale atin nan toldolo bukandadu wodia musifalo tokatu woman nafa soto. Aman nafa soto for two good reasons. If an opposition UDP is against an opposition, you know, UMC or is against an opposition PDOIS, it weakens and of course disintegrates the opposition fabric and only strengthens the incumbent that is hell-bent on self-perpetuation in the country. You know, collective action problems are meant to be dealt with collectively. But that does not mean that we do not have our individual differences. We have our own differences, but there comes a time when we should put aside our individual differences and see the collective action problem and deal with it decisively. Then and there, when you have the necessary reforms put in place, more laughter mean that you go and pursue that. But don't burn bridges. And at the end of the day, Gambia is not like other democracies where you have a 50+1 term limit here and then, all of those things in there. We have a simple majority voting system. So that means there is nothing like a second round. What exists is just one-time election. He becomes president. Then the most important thing to do at this stage is Kanyo Konradiano and of course call the opposition to come together, no matter the differences. If we really care about the Gambia, if we really claim to love the Gambia, and it is the Gambia that we want all the genuine reforms to be done for, and if we are not only seeking ourselves, individual interests. Ali sabare nunyoe. If the political party I seek to support today, I felt I am not in line with what they're doing, or I seek to be president myself, I could quit and of course form my political party. That should not actually necessitate all kind of things that do not really mean well for anybody. Momo lafita minna dro is okay nole. But I mean, Kumada, is when we pay attention to the collective action problem. And these are things that often people try to avoid talking about. But all these problems are caused by a set of people in society. And today we will talk about them. Even whereas Mbarinyolu lafta a UDP government, which I think is also possible. But there are things that you should not forget as well. The people that you think are, undecided voters, and this constant pursuit of come and join us is not a language that sits well with a lot of people. Change your political tactics and, of course, political language. The coalition 2016 building, and whatever coalition you would build tomorrow, it will not make any sense to tell me that the biggest political party cannot lead that particular coalition. And I don't think, in my view, that that is the problem of the Gambians. And I don't think, in my view, this is what Gambians are opposing. And I don't think, in my view, this is what the opposition parties are not ready for. But as well as the biggest, as the leading, then lead those coalition talks. But of course, lead them responsibly and professionally. Ole atinna ntebuka diamo damuta molla mini alonko, they make comments that are not positive, because if one person make a negative comment, there are 1,001 people who have positivity embedded in them. You have very positive and cordial relationship with, and of course some of them your own family members. So you will not actually go against a political party simply because another person throw a jab at somebody you support. It doesn't work that way. But one thing people must understand, if you are progressively and consistently attacking a political leader, then you are exposing your leader to political attacks. Abukolo ko korda kon do ite bat la jebe molo banen nay koy baten nen na o manke ku kendeti ita molo jibele ko ibe wala nyaton ko le caricature lay koy taye tuje wota kenola. So momin ka modol la molo neng, you are just insulting yours, because ni wali wonen ndiro murunda long ko ite le taneng alen kakala oke o manke politikoti. Politiko nte woti. And that is why when you listen to people, I took time to listen to Mbari. I don't want politicians caricaturing each other, more so from the opposition end. Because we have a collective action problem, and that problem is the regime that is hell-bent on doing the dubious. When the police got killed, the first person that was arrested, or the first two persons who were arrested, was, of course, because of their own pronouncements that were saying that, of course, police and of course, when we are revenging, is going to be ugly. Now, the regime capitalized on those statements, went on to perpetrate that heinous crime and turned around and arrested them because they wanted to put it on them. So that was a ploy. Listen. Politiko Jowyata. Nimmoye Mira 2016, that which UDP did everything possible to make sure that its candidate becomes the leader of the coalition. Even though this candidate was the least qualified among all candidates. But how did he win? Because this is the biggest opposition party that exists, and of course its influence and authority was able to propel Barrow to win the coalition 2016, and not because of his competence, a Darajonteng, a Fahamuronteng, a Londonteng, a Faramasonteng. Nothing. It's simply because you were backed by the biggest, but you are the worst. So, if at that time you were able to, of course, lead the coalition using your influence and whatsoever to actually lead that without even telling the people that we are the biggest and we must lead, why that kind of conversation today? Being biggest within the opposition is nothing that anybody can dispute, and it's nothing that anybody can downplay. And of course, it's the biggest advantage to the opposition bench. And of course, it is something that people should, rely on, and of course, bring other oppositions together. Kajoko, Moro, the problem in this country is not this particular person, but of course, it's the regime in place. But we will not forget those who destroyed Coalition 2016. This is where the problem lies. Because Atolta Fonolan Tolioko, the leader you choose is the same person that told us that 3 years to Kelajang. Ntanyina lo fananade. Tonya abuke fulade. Anuntasila la fananka ofo. You have a right to choose whoever as your candidate, just as other people believe in other candidates. But when we come to actually talk about collective action problems requiring that collective solution, you cannot paint other people black and want to paint yours, all white. Atakenola. Oto alinda malikana dunyola kulami alonkona fatala. But atonyama kilina today. I believe in the force that the United Democratic Party has, and I believe that, of course, they could form a formidable government. But I also know from reflective thinking that they have done things that sometimes to some people are unforgivable, and you must acknowledge those facts. And people agreed on a 3-year transition period. And there comes a time, members of your party, including your leadership, claim that 3 years to Kelajang. Gorcha kadu. Any molo kamenda minna. Alibara wala. Alibeji kiri minifangol labi. Some of them blocked some of us in 2016-17 simply because we said, respect the transition that you agreed with the Gambian people. Wala mutonyati. Some of them went on to tell us that the laws are the laws, and of course, agreements are just moral issues. When has morality been reduced to nothing in this country? Just for political interest? These are the reflective thinkings of ordinary Gambian people who are not members of any political party. Because wolka ajala ko kari, molok da kota minna jam, molbe karrefa minna jay, tolle fintita yo buruka jam. Alte o bayi nola. Alinkana nyo kaja finno nga tonya fonno nyoye. So the best bet for 2026 would be these leaders that exist. Let's allow somebody. Look, UDP is a political party formidable. Some of us actually have mentors within and around. They have connections globally. bara mini wulita kunu ko ntol na atol ni gambian ko be d'accord ta min na jangin ko ala wata kala jang loi min be jang wala be bara la jang fo kabiri wala ka kamben no atol malo non ko loi so total. But again, it's the same political party as a party that distancing itself from those comments and said those comments are solely the responsibility of the commentator. That means they understood and believed that the comments were not what they agreed on with the Gambian people. That means the party in itself disagrees with the leadership and the comment that it has made about the coalition 2016. So what a bini to ko ibe modol jalaila ibe wala kala mo jawoliti ibe wala kala mo kuroliti moro nin ko be nyomu ndira nyola ko mo kanjang amanta opposition o makoyla anu nga fo mbari yele. It's not important that people begin to actually castigate each other unnecessarily. Aralla diamu nyabe lan na tambe kanede moma mono diamu la jang mo be sa kodo keno la bara manjarala horomo nimbunya mo la ka politiko tamande walla ninna yato ninna signora ninna badi yalto pama ne tenin tolo be bora lo wanyomi, you know. But the whole point is that moro ntolo manke. I don't even try to get to those comments, but moro mola banko di ya man tambin tolo bete nyim banko kan bada ngoko indila ika karafa min doya karafa man tabarinnet ando nyomi do mota fola sonkol ya kontolo mu kudol lati woto o manke kuto min sotota ika berane min fonda mamalo bota wolto alkal kunda ben tolle ya ni malon dun ta sukuta kunda nyin karo keje tolo bal ni alaji so sonko nyol wol mun tolo mamal lati min yim bal wulu ni tara njaay kunda don wollo nkay mama musolo bota wollo to so wokorda fulo ni tara nyomi beren ni te yalo noko atolo man farma samoti woto atolo la nyato you know like what exactly atolo molka mun jaay molka nja woto ni to koy ben tolo doyala etebe karafa doyala etebe karafa iba moli jutande la karafa la nyimbanko ka fentem fo politiko mun jarta ni teka ataya grosso la sannon karafa Senegal way mo nafa mun la wajarta mun fola ko denga way mo tala mun la. But kunung, for 28 good years, Karafa was with the United Democratic Party, loyal to the party and its leadership. Nembi we kudoje ko biwode, I want to move somewhere else. Mora tentu yaja yafa ko good luck to whatever you seek. But ete to doyanola. Pamane, Imam Baraka Karafati. Imam Baraka Karafati, iulu nyama nyinya Karafati, and ite Karafa doyanola. We will not watch you people try to shame and of course, insult our relatives and we watch you because you think it's politics. No, it will not work that way. And this is not an outside conversation. And told them malla but lo wenyomin, told them malla but oberin tundol nindula kotangol to what alanga singa nyonya kono jibing ato nya fon no nyoe. Ntolo mama wora ulo wulu to beren ni sati lo kono anja kundante nga sukuta kundante woto ndama moja mi yalongo wolse wuli ko kan tolo doya wala ka fon tolo ko to wulu nyani nyata ntolo ti nyimbanko ka o manke ku soto renti woto nyon doya man kun tolo dam malo temba ya molbe UDP ya molbe other political parties ya molbe hani for APRC ndula ko tongoloto, but we deal with them with respect and decorum. And of course, we respect people's divergence and of course, personal choices. But that does not stop the fact that the body yani kanunte yani nyumu yomimbenda malu temwe tuje. Ngamo ila diamo kono eko modo lebeje wolebe sabatiring, a room and a parlor la konadunta japotate moro. Even if somebody lives in a single room, they have equal right as to the person who lives in 10-story buildings in this country. Linkana nyo doya politiko manjarala ngo hani mi ya lon ko talale babula man baluwo fo ngoso do bit tembote ngaman konton fo ngoso dabe konton na minna ngo woni teni mo kotengol be kanyanta nyimbanko kanne politically. They have equal voice as even the one who is leading the country as president. Woto Kakuma fo moma because of I mean soto anama mean soto ko wala nyanta kela multi ko wala kadiamu nyimbanko ka o mu jutun na yaleti politiko manjari wala amanjarala and anybody can speak like that ngafo mbari yana komanto this UDP UMC issues here and there, it should be watched carefully because nimmi mante ani hakilo la drong abetadu neni molo tema badi ya sonna mwali yolla because anda manjari wobela ha bara ko kelen nanda so falede ntolta silanka molo jibe kam badi molo doya e ko ebo wala kala kuti mi yalon ke manke minti bukale na dekal fuñu dekul ci deka bini lolu ken du ko nangul fi ken politique nak bu rafet na rafet waye nak bo len ko bëggé défé nenen duna démé nenen de because bu metti ken du fi xolaat lak because molbe mimbe jibe kan ebe nyaka si kan ko dolla comme mbaji be kan ko ala nga do mon no ñofe mo dole be je wala ma wala long ñoñu luñ wala mim faham wala ñinte ko fire for fire, that's the only language they understand amanjarala kasika wandi alfalu jibe ke tumi je nolla fentem fo politiko muna jaratala bara kunun ita control ko wal mo kende balleti bi sita wal they make other choices ita koy wal tumi jenola ita koy dole muru ya wal ke danul lati ko wal man fahamu wal man fellon wal man londi so de tele londo so to wal si pamane tele be karafa doyala kafo kono ha bara man lawo jartala karafa sonko nala londin taya nala fahamu balia ite mimfo kwete ya fo nyamin abe lorin no UDP fe wala nyama consistently kabira be koleari kabira be during kabirin fe manke fenti ha bare kabirin UDP na rama sakunda 2017-18 ale karafa kamenet nyomi tundo kan jumala keta fenti woto afonye ntollo berandi nindula ko tengol to jumala keta fenti woto karanata ntollo woto londi tiolta ntollo woto mo kendo lo mambo ntollo woto wolte palasi marano la masakunda alinkana nyon nakareno politics is a choice, and when people make those choices, respect them with their choices. Kato nite tonta yebulo chodi alonko yebulo kondi nano beka muru nefang kan keta nyininka. How about you? Kunun karafa bete atali. Bara bi karafa moja ubaleti. Kunun talib bete atali. Bara bi talib moja ubaleti. Kuno mo ko tengo beti atal bare bi wol mo moja uballet. When you speak to people who have brains and can listen. You cannot vilify people in a way that you want it amanjarala. Anong nyim politique nya sifa ka fo mole ko nga moyle dega na fogna yakarna duli kese. Nina muto nyati. My source said that Ami Bensouda was chased out of a particular community. Moro, who is your source? Nyemukula de mi ya lonko, common sense will tell you that that cannot even happen. Intola yato benyaming. Even if that person came to my house and I believe that I don't believe in their politics in its entirety, imbuke bay because Gambia no ma wolonka mo bay. Gambia no buko okay. What womanke kuti min sotota. Don't say things that do not exist just because you want to satisfy your political ego. And you are hunted digger. And you are hunted digger. Go. Even if your enemy comes to your house, momi yalonka kula kela mi yalonka ni silo ni sartol manta ebuke bay. Cause Gambia no ma wolong. Na police always say janne yo Omar baji bunkido la ya fa man sakundala molo wulete tata wala suwolo kono bare me bayde. They still sit with them, and of course, ini kachata kulami yalonko inyanta wala kachala. But that was a very angry family. But when it comes to just little politics, iti amiben should have bonula yanya de la kakata lalato in a particular community without having prior communication to that even community, or having any prior conversations about those people about coming there for politics, just for her to get up and go there and then just to be chased out. Kavuko itela sosia wala for a power one ten tonyati. One ten tonyati de. Woman ke tonyati kat woman tarantola Gambian kayato. Santolo badi ndamal nga diamun no nyoy nga jiben what will come out of it. Abeolo konombari mfananko that there are people mini alonko wala kate ko ninyi ne tate la politiko la e ka follow ko nyin ethnos centric comments wala make ko hamga manin ko ta keno la teninte nyin kante malle fanko ofo akammalle ka avocado ngala nako. Imagine telling that your source told you or somebody told you moro me afa maria to, and then afa mari is very simple. Ni monata be odi amusifa. The best evidence you would have is to record them say what they said. But of course, because kullo miniman soto, and there is a way to actually bamboozle the people, and all you could basically say mole ya fonye wala ya fomu sole nyala minata afondole ko karenyol ka politiko kenyina kama. Show us proofs and evidence. We cannot use this kind of politics to actually downplay facts within our society. You might disagree with the people, but you cannot actually in a way try to paint them bad. Amanga kukendet. Khadija, can you go give this to mommy? Yeah, and don't come back here, okay? Go straight up. Go. Come on, go. Good. Moro one tem politikoti. So my whole point is that people got to come together to realize that there is a collective action problem. But even whereas we got to solve this collective action problem, there is a common but differentiated responsibilities that each of these political parties can play. And I've listened to somebody who sat on the TV, Kavoko a PDI is many alonko more 5,000 malabi, more honey more killing the babulu, or more killing is important for the opposition coalition. Aledia munyabe kuja mala tinyakande. Anun tolodolo bejikala tekande. Baraku killing the ngolonde. We will not watch anybody insult our relatives and family simply because you actually have a divergence of political view with them. No. Moda sonna moe wala jande. Moman baraka moti jang, moda man dia moti jang, moman kuku nyon tanke nyimbanko kankata mimode, alanga nyo hora mga nyo bunya nunga nyo konoto dia nunga nyo susun nyo kanga hanyi nyo la kaja ko nga adam baro bondi. This is our collective responsibility. Because you don't even know what to say and how to say it, because the whole point becomes that you find yourself in a very difficult situation. You want everybody to come together to make sure that we remove this regime. If this is the ultimate goal of everybody, that you seek to actually make sure there is change in this country, you will not turn around and look at your fellow opposition and be throwing jabs at them. You should be going to their events and even encouraging them to come and join each other. And then of course the right thing be done. But amanke sembo today. Amanke forse today. And again, I've seen I don't have problems with people. The opposition need to come and join the United Democratic Party, which is very clear from the separatist report. Parango. Reflective thinking will also tell you that ning ayatarako, the propaganda that you've never lost elections and you've been winning progressively and consistently. You don't need any opposition coalition. All you need is to go and safeguard your votes, and of course you will be declared winners. Hey, politico must be based on truth, consistency, and honesty. If you have the belief that you've won all the past elections, including 2021, why do you need an opposition coalition? Go and safeguard your votes, and so that you can be declared the winner in December. But evidently, we know that the regime uses all its tools and powers to remain in power, because right now we've seen them even disbursing millions to women, simply telling them that all you got to do is to own a membership card of the NPP. NPP is a collective action problem. Anundeta more support la fania kande. Anunte, I will not actually be that cheeky person that you think. Like some people would come to my inbox. No, you got to support this particular person. Karen yolbe karle keleka moro anta buka mola keleka ede. The keba banta bayan dun ne karamodo fayan dun ne karamodo nga futa bitem wala moyna fonte ko karle malla fi karla ngata karya. Nin kar malla fi karla na haji tije. How is that my problem? My problem is the regime that is hell-bent on self-perpetuation and, of course, subjugating the Gambian people. People prefer to take a 50-50 chance of living or dying in the Mediterranean Sea. Corruption o mimbe nyimbanko kan fatolo nyamo wajama atol da mal kalbe nyoka jafo la walalbe kumol la foka nyoma mi yalon ka manyinya. And this is not one-sided. And then politicians will understand that both from the UMC side and of course from the UDP side. Yaje naliem bari na natalo post kwa maneta lalbe kumatilimbalol fokangama. Atadi alante. Barangara no fanan ko mbari no fananka kumal fama mi yalon ko ama nyinya anda fem fono lo fananto. So I would actually just stay back and look. Nimna mtu nyati. Ndi amantambari yakullo do bankedo moro. Political among, it doesn't feel good that some people but don't actually come burning bridges among candidate, because you don't know tomorrow. Moro nimbe kumo folema mi yalonko soma be malula nini sita nganyonya kona jibe nta folema bi. Because nobody knows tomorrow. The person you treat as a villain today might be the person you need the most tomorrow to actually achieve that collective interest. Alanga domondo nyofe. But then you will not impose on people that they will not think independently on their own, that you must force a thought on them. No. Atakeno la wanyama. Atakeno la wanyama. Within your political establishment, within the time that you all were together, mingo minketa woto na kuta woto. Bara moro ninkunu iko nyamumo kendolati. Binko yo konte ilata minante malla wala lata kudo lenya kono jibe ko ikafo nyalo ko imu generality moro. That speaks more of you than the person you are trying to say those kind of things to. And then at the end of the day, it derails the opposition efforts. Ndaka jela fali, ali jela fahamu. Ma UDP kong. Ma opposition koten kong. Mammo koten. I have really no, look, I have no ill feeling against anybody. For what? Because wobente mari na fala muna fangola. There is only one person that I listen to. Mfonka aje ko tonya nyinka mimfo ale alon kila alon ngam malule fang. That is that I just saw he comment over here, not a mass. When I listen to this person, I realize, you know what? There is no much of a difference. It's just that we are not having conversations, and all that we are doing. Political Moro, you got to be very resilient to be a politician. You're saying all kind of things to Karafasongo. UMC turn around and of course Walter the Biosongo Bekumo Sifa Befalai. And then I would sit back and say, you know what? This one is just insulting one of my uncles. This one is also insulting another of my uncles. What do you expect us to do? Because atakeno la badim fasata bekela tonyala fasati. Barabutum jumala benafintla publicly you're trying to demean your own family members. We can't do that. They are all entitled to their political ideologies and whatever they believed in. And that is what I believe in. But we will not watch you insult our people out of nothing. It must be based on truth, respect, and decorum. And if we want to check for faults, we will see faults everywhere. You know, sometimes people don't understand. I've seen people, they are top brasses within the United Democratic Party. No matter how busy their schedules are, in terms of human development, they've got to the levels. But that they did not even spare time. I'm not home. They come all the way to my office to actually offer parental advice. Not financially, but morally, and of course trying to put you on the right path. When my, grandpa Abdullah Sonko, attack, sometimes we don't actually try to bring, one thing about me is I don't bring family into conversations of politics, but we got to that point and we got to. I bring Abdullah Sonko attack. He was in Liberia, he later was in Liberia, and of course with, in Sudan for some time, not Sudan, Libya for some time. He later, while fighting for Charles Taylor, they had to come back to Gambia when a Gambian flight was sent there. Now, upon arrival, in Gambia, he got arrested by the Jammeh regime, and he had to go to court for the Farafenni attacks. He was released, before 2016, and then he passed away. But when he was going to court, he was initially defended by Ousainou Numukunda Dabo, and was later again defended by my Ahmed Fati. And all of these things were done pro bono. But of course, often he had to change counsels because we know the regime that was there at the time. Listen. But a dunia lebo nyama ite badi mo jalaila, no matter what good or what people perceive to be bad they got involved in. But these are people that defended some of our family members when nobody else did. Otontolte wolo konna ning ayata roko hasidia ning konnante yata sonda molo konna. That is basically what people need to understand. Mazi, maka dila problem wala fonsiara fonti, Nkara baya bukaso. Ta kana njibe na atomo yaja kanjibe na korek. That is the point. What a be nimwe kumafo mo mami alonko political latinete or former. You are not winning the heart of that person, neither are you winning the hearts of his family members nor his close associates. Katu kajafiro mam min dade ya wala tinye. Na manke kende ati. Fenti je mimfisi ati bete ati. Oto alanga domon no nyofe. Even when you look at survey results that I do not want to get into, because one thing I believe in, when I saw people say, no, why this particular question was not in there, or why didn't they ask the question in this way, or why wasn't it asked this way, there is no methodological monocropping in opinion surveys, and this is a perception survey, and perceptions does not necessarily represent reality, but then at the time of the survey, that is the perception of the people, and of course it is time bound. It does not mean that a perception today would be the same perception tomorrow, because things can change within a split of a second. It can even be a perception this minute might change the next minute. And then when people speak, you must speak with intellectual consciousness than exposing one's ignorance on matters that you know nothing about. But this particular survey told you, and of course informed you, that the best thing to do is put our egos aside and realize that we have a collective action problem, and the survey has already indicated that our unionism in fighting that collective action problem is what will actually give us the dividend that we desire. I'll give you a classical example. I have neighbors within this, complex. Mbuka fonyo salam, mbuka fonyo kortana tela. We don't even know each other. We don't care if we live in these buildings or not. either your house or whatever, Mula Haji Soto in the complex. But recently there was a heavy storm. Kabiri waketa mobe mela motolo fintindino. Because we were all blocked. And you know what we did? Ntole mimbuka afonyo efanko salam wala kortana tela wala kairabe. We all actually picked our spades. We removed one car at a time because mbe kanale mbenga nyumoto kilingo bondinga move ngatanyi ndola moto bondi ngatanyi ndola moto bondi motolo be fintita wala nyama, because that was a collective action problem. Even though we don't know each other, with our diverse backgrounds, we don't even greet each other, we don't say hello to each other. That day we realized that we have a common problem, and then to solve that there needs a common but differentiated responsibilities. Moro jamuta nga jamuta mbenga asaba nunyola. Even though the next day we will meet and not even say hello to each other again. But at that time, there was a need to come together to actually solve that problem. Moro, alanga jele jennu bang. Alanga jele jennu. The survey is to inform and of course help you to actually, develop and of course project what you could do, what you could change, and what you could do better, but not to outrightly reject it or try to question its credibility or even try to impose your own thoughts in terms of how to question it. Look, that is what I refer to as academic entrepreneurship and of course academic politics. There was a time while I was taking my PhD research, I had to do a couple of publications because as part of the requirements, and they have to be like Scopus, Scopus Index, like, high level, high impact journals. And I submitted a couple of papers to, these so-called top journals. And when the reviewers make comments, some of them were referring me to actually take references to materials, and those materials were actually written by themselves. You know why? Because they want to boost their own academic presence within the intellectual space. That is politics. You are a reviewer. You should review my document and of course tell me what I need to do better. But of course you are recommending your own paper to be put in as reference because that will boost your index within the intellectual space. Barayalo womante batandi, because that in itself, either it does not help me, but it does not reduce me. So why can I not do it? Why would I say no moro manta na haji teje? Because the whole point now becomes that moro niye kare mako yate barakata te mako yate barakata to be alafta min albe wasoto we jumale tora munalbe mantara kairo kono ba. Yenno mukute mi yalonko, this is what people need to see. Moro alanga jela jennu. I would say this because even saying it, some people will come, you are a hypocrite, you are this, you are that, you are this and that. More on that coming from man angaze, man nakragaluma lolo de. Abe olo kon hanin se henning wala ninge jebe diamondo lankanyala kazanga go. You know what? It's not necessary. One thing about me is that I live in a very diverse community. Not just a community like, okay, I grew up in a very diverse setting that typically my paternal side are typically Karoninkas, and some of them are not even Muslim Christians. And then my mother is typically Nyominga, Nomi Berending, Sukuta Kunda, Njai Kunda, Watamote Bolano Omafon, like Koibe Kumatimbalo Folantole Katu, Tolmambo Lasila Kurumbala, and no Mambo Doya Molofanambara. My favorite uncles typically support the United Democratic Party. And then most of my paternal side at the time were typical APRC supporters. And then you see people that will tell you, I don't know, Bunjada was body, like, when I see like some of my, like one of my uncle will call me every other day, okay, come and support NPP. But that does not stop our relationship and of course family ties. Even when I say NPP got to go, he would send, he would send me a lot of insults. But then this is one person that I can vibe with for 2 whole hours on the phone. It does not change anything. We have a collective action problem that we must solve collectively. And until we put our egos aside, then we can basically solve that. It's just like you sit down, you see somebody who claims to be a religious scholar. itening kari atolo be ko dina kilingo nyinga atolo ko wole balundi atolo ko wole faramansandi atolo ko wole preach atolo ka mol convince ka mol shushindi kana wala kan ka mol shushindi kata ko kendo kan ke fatande ko jawala bara atolo dam mal ka nyoji be alka fo dolo ko itemu nafikolati bare atolo fango ya lon ko ala fango ya fo subhanahu wa ta'ala ko mo manyan na fo le nyon hada mane ko yemu nafikolati because judgment is entirely and solely on Allah azza wa jalla. And then you turn around and you say, Ninko atemu dina dun keletanda, atemu preachaleti, atemu molete mi alon ko atel Quran lo kara. But itaka toni itaka fa nyong muslim ko etemu na afikoleti. Moro, alike mira hakilo. Atalaka dunia samba. Amanga Allah nyong kumoleti de. That is why I believe in one thing. Lata min lata wallah. And I know who I listen to, and I know what I deduce from what people say. And that is basically what people need to understand. I listened to a little sheikh who looked around and said, Christian will be better at Jahannamal. If Allah tam arjanati. But the same person that you said, the same God you said you're preaching for did prohibit you from judging people, but you will turn around and judge people and then make yourself look like you are the best out there. And then you try to tell people that karinyo munafiko ledi, italo mo kendoti, but italo kende ya fonko, italo kuma kangolo fongo damma, yete bondi mo kendo lo konole. Alanga domon nunyo fe. Alanga domon nunyo fe. Because political at the end of the day, Nimbi, it is yet a community kuti wal mante wal nana man hani fengo fenne kente. It speaks more about you. But ni fanansi deko, kare mo kendol tinum bara biya manke mo kended. It also speaks more about you. But at the end of the day, people will just sit back and watch and say, moro, luga ide forek bahna. You know mutonyati. In every facet of society, we've seen people, the way they actually interact with people. It only a miracle. It only kende ata modulo man kende. It only bete ata modulo man bete. It only multimin beduna jana bar dol bete ala dimbala kon. As if it was already put on a TV screen for them that karanyo mutana karanyo. Who are you to judge people? Who are you to tell people what they do right or what they do wrong? And then the little thing about some of this little sheikh, they look at people and tell you, itara don dulale, aleta fala tinya wodo, al politician no le support, al da bonne molla dino mato letat, al falle tamu nyin dinot. Actually, ya kurano jindi nato le suokono. Atol le tam is your biological inheritance. Hey, al mol khoramale mol bunya, al nkana dunyo kasida, because khoramanta ya mamona fa fenna. And then more so, people of the book should be the most soft-spoken people. Mini along ko na kandite itolia sumiandi, na kontinte itolia yomfandi, ka domon nunyofe, ka molo konoto diano, ka molo wakilende kula mini along ko, wala ni silo ni sarto tada. But kalafang wala kamfandi, kalafang ke kamera ko ni atol dolo fonke annabiyo molti, atol be cool mintal, wala ni atol dolo ke malaya kolti, atol be modul kamala matala ki kuntum because ale daji ko to al mankuto to al ke barol tal diamu nyala fangoto, waya tandila ko moro. Some of you are very intolerant. That is not how you preach to a people, and that is not how you convince a people, because moro dunia man sula sembetio la kodenke. People don't need strong leaders. People need reasonable people who actually have the sense and of course the ability to reason with people. I know, like, for some of you would think, oh yeah, because he's going to be by go. In 2017, but even after blocking me, I was the strongest, one of the strongest advocates for those people, for the good things they were doing in the communities in which they lead. Because Ntenite Temo should not influence my judgment about the common good. I don't operate like that. My parents have no influence on my decisions, just like I do not have influence over their decisions. But of course, we listen and reason as family as per what is necessary. Kajo ko moro guide yourself proper kana dum mol kasida katu ni dun da kube kuto soma malole benetar laje andung ni be kumo fono la moma bi so may na mari ta nyonya ko na jibe no la wata manjar yo fama katu at the end of the day ibe na malole ni jala ro la soto laje woto nimme tentu no nge jayi la barakendo lante jala la kulami yalon ko ala yalon kila yalon amanyi nyanga fo no ino ka fokon nga domon no nyofe. We know where the problem is. And we know that Gambians don't believe in this regime. But we also know that there are a lot of things that had happened, from 2017 or 2016 all the way to today, that some people will not forgive. And of course, some people will not forget. And we also know that some people played a key role in keeping this regime where it is. Because they embolden this terrible leadership that we have in this country. When we transition from Kana song to Kasongo, that is where intellectual honesty have diminished in this country. Listen. And in some WhatsApp groups, people actually considered some of us as little talks for those persons. They metamorphose into pure regime supporters to a point that you actually respect their decision to support the regime, but they would go the extra mile to defend the indefensible to a point that they will jump and insult you in public and block you. Go. One thing that I would tell go. One thing that I got to tell people, a man who rose through the ranks in government, it had to a point that you even become Minister of Presidential Affairs, Secretary General and Head of Civil Service. Ite murun nang kwatenge foka tara Facebook kamolu neng ka kumatilimba lolo fo muloma. Ite toni ko, ite you are trying to stop those people from actually throwing jabs at the president. Listen. But that is why I do not disagree with Yankuba Dabo mostly. And because I don't have any personal relation, I use this platform to communicate what I believe in. If somebody could go up to that level and reduce himself to a common insulter on the web, why would you actually match up that particular person? Tundu bumburu ngomimbuko West Coast region wala late tela yakarte faye yeke la nyaton koti. Woto modo le bejemini alon ko moro hani wolka sile kete baneng ijibe ko madroya fo ko alama ala yale dema. But you should not actually match up to that kind of derogatory public conduct, because at the end of the day, Modolbeje Wolde cannot in any way rise up to cleanse themselves. So all they will do is to drag everybody to the mud with them. And then what you say should be your individual responsibility, no matter how they try to get to you or offend you. Barango. Kafo mansa yako mansa konoba muntumala wakeda nendrote nyimbanko ka. Hani ayatara found you believe that this person should not say this particular thing to the leadership. Ite murung ite Seattle la party platform oto. Eka afole ko dinding kulubalo mimbe nyindula kari. Wo kulubali kandani mfenkulu. Bare kulubali ala fang watambeta wala. But then, why waste time to actually get into a forth and back with such person? So people close to that corridor should actually be able to say, you know what, there are things to respond to and there are things not to. But of course, if you are as temperamental as those persons, you would actually think that everything is fire for fire. There is a moment where you should be better than some things, and there are moments that you of course need to reciprocate those energies where necessary. Because political for that temple to many alonko, people in authority, all that you got to do is to make sure you convince your electorates and of course try to bring the opposition together and not to allow people within the regime to actually force, a division within the opposition so that it could be to their advantage. Because Walabella Filla Walla Wallafta Minna is to continue to rule, to loot, and of course destroy this country. So you who is not in power, why are you fighting each other? To see somebody to say, molka kumakanga mean for president, mantenata puruka walla dang, and then try to make it look like, Karenyol trying to attack those people. Some people, I understand, bullies only understand their own language, but not every bully, because some bullies don't even know what they're doing. Moro. Nimmo konte ko bi. Atele be wulla puru kanten ka tandi mulla ko Adam, Adam la man sakunda criticize so wala be danda nyimbanko ka. Fenne be caring wala man min fa nyimbanko ka. Ka to mola minita da fe ka fonto le ko ya jame furele fi sa Adam baluri ngote. Munante nta sa wala respond no on issues or matters relating to Adam. Adam antankalala. Kato kuta nyimbanko kami ya lonko doyaro kumollomu mansa hormanta ya kumollomu anin kulmini ya lonko hanin na ya fangoto moto fole I hani dingo fangoye so ko ila alpha waliya walla fo nyimbanko kanja mom nobody actually said anything to them nimbi wolton de ko ka fo modol leko alta fala mansa fa ka kono wata la mora la fo leko alama jabo dadi ala marseto na dawoto. But then the same people will tell you that no, until we are trying to stop people saying one thing or another to the president. But meanwhile, you are on the web insulting other people. Along, ega hormone mbunya la jibe ni molo tema ni kudo la minitambite ni tema. But the likes of Momodo Sabali wolo balo manferin tolo doleti. Isafono nyame mintambita wala safono wala nyama. We are younger. We have the energy. We have the time. We have the space. And we have what it takes to bully and to be anyhow. But at the end of the day, abe mari na fala munala hanifeng. Wala atine konendirla ataka ke multe mi yalon kaka kumala fo mi masoto wala mi man koyama oto mu fani yalade annum fani ya fodum o mo kilingol le they use religion to bamboozle society to make themselves look like they are very pious, but when in reality ila barolo ni ke kuolo iman kutolo aning dino fon e min fon fo ifatata bake dun danda double tongue politicians ni wol koy ben tolo dolo jalay la mona jaray la lebe jaray fenne be tabul. Imagine a person whom the police were killed and the first person to be arrested was him. Turn around to say he's trying to defend Mama Jabi on a particular post. And just for me to say, are you really defending Mama Jabi? And for you to jump and start raining insults. But that is one thing. And then because that is why most times I call everybody in Kodo, even people that I'm older than. But that does not mean anything. But the whole point is that I only wait for you to cross the line, because if you do, that does not mean that moro. But there is no person who will tell you in this wide world ko karle follow tanye kumatilimbal follow wala karle neng wala karle kumafanyami yalon ko ala yalon kila yalon mandianye. I don't do that. But do you really seek to support Mama Jabi? You start jumping, raining insults on me, and then the best thing you could have done was to jump and hit that block button. Cowards. Yalong moro afoman diadron. Baranyolong kunda konto nyinkata wato. But to conclude this conversation, what we intended to say here is, Pamanete, I don't know you personally, but people within the lower Nyumi belt, and then we will not want people to see you say one thing or another to people. Just like, my uncle. Now I've seen people you're like, you know what, don't do this, and of course I let it slide because there is nothing Hanifo, we have seen very prominent people within certain political parties. More of those people take a whole of their time to be on the phone for 15 minutes, 1 hour. That is way more than what money can buy. And they try to put you on the right path. And most of them would even say, you know what, stay neutral and stay out of politics here and there. But we cannot do that. We cannot continue to watch this country sink in the hands of the kakistocrats. So it becomes a collective responsibility to put kanyo konoto dia no kanyo wakilinde no kamoro alanga nyo nengo ninyo kaja fo tuje ntolo da mallomo nin kunun diara nimbe ku yara lon ko hani korda ko no musol ni kelka sonkale bino kumol dol ka foje so malbe kamal walla la manjari walla la. But even whereas we realize that our political ideologies are very variant and of course they are not matching up, at this point, getting into 2026 December, we have a collective action problem. And that collective action problem can only be solved collectively. And that is our collective responsibility. Kare nyolo bula yela politiko ke ite fana yela politiko ke bara butung alay fonyo kanyo tinya wala ka kumal fonyo mami yalon ka manyinya because so much sinning ibe dunka molla kasida min yalon ko tonya ala yalon kila yalon wala malla fi dunna ku kono mi yalon ka bakela nyo jala yo nim fenkole because that does not help the opposition. And that is why most people are actually putting in maximum restraint because wala fita minna wala dino ni sawobe muminti wala nyinte ko aje Gambia e boni marale jawo ko na ba min kono tay ni maralo that is our problem. It's not the opposition fighting each other. That is none of our business. But Martin Komoro come Mosilata Molladan, what a mota fono la Komodoka for Manyamin, Aman Jarala. And then we have like no person in this country, me a brain soto, and you have a functional cerebrum who will tell you that, of course, the United Democratic Party is not a force to be recognized. That it is not the biggest opposition party. That when coalition talks are initiated, of course, it will take a very formidable position in it. But of course, nobody will also dispute the fact that the United Democratic Party contributed significantly because of its leadership in the transition of 2016 that actually failed because of the utterances of its leadership. So what I think political dialogue give and take lomo, and then we need to actually have those conversations. But that does not mean that there is a perfection, within a particular establishment, and there is complete dirt in another. No. To remove this regime, it must be built on a perfection of combination of factors. An all-inclusive opposition front will easily bring an end to this disgusting regime that is hell-bent on self-perpetuation. And where that did not happen, the parties that claim to be big will get their big votes, yet the regime would continue to be in there. So what have we achieved collectively? Nothing. We will continue to oppose while they continue to loot and milk the country, continue to take debt that would actually, continue to sink this country. I've told a lot of people, focus on the regime while we all go. Alkara school alake kanoja kalba abal buti ratol dindinda malalka menga adangan ko shot. Doba buntan na jana sakeno ale win barnal ko nga karabul anin kare telefona pareta ngana kar do ci kanani wo fana kala bal bele killing lambala ka diata e nyami nyando mkuti nyanda millon ngo hani patimi yalon ko mo kiline bebulo you need them. Hana alka minifon describe as they live in Roman Palo. You need them because they also have votes. Moro itemimbe bunjanta lulu kono. You still have one single vote. So in a simple majority system, you need every vote from a poor, a weak, whatever. You need everybody and treat everybody with respect. Because horomo nimbunya laka mosila. And you do not understand this, but this is the strength of the regime. For the last 2 years, we've said everything that you could think about to this regime, but its people are more persistent to calling us to come and join them. Why isn't the opposition doing that? We actually put our egos aside. We actually, calm it a little bit down, and of course see the Gambia. Allow other people to ning ayata ning pati kar sa mota sambana. Idala padi sa mota lul sambana. Karla padi sa mota war sambana. Ni will be la nyokang. That is what is going to beat this regime, but not our individual desires of wanting to make this particular person president or make the next person president or whatsoever. Remember, we were supposed to have a new constitution, and this multi-party democratic system was going to work because all of these parties will go and run on their own. The incumbent does not have a 50+1, which I am sure they will not get. What we will do is basically all other parties will join the opposition to actually easily unseat the regime. But a woman in Bangkokang, and this regime does not want to bring in a new constitution. All they want is to keep that simple majority system. To even support or actually fund an opposition party to actually avoid or prevent an opposition coalition. To weaken the opposition further. Political sometimes is about the mind. It's not about emotions. Ntolbuka political on emotions, because when I listen to you, I'm like, Carla opinion respect it. But I will still believe that Moro and that should be respected and of course, tolerated in society, in a decent society. Because there is no perfect system, there is no perfect region, there is no perfect leadership, there is no perfect individual, and there is no perfect family. So I never wanted to get into these things because some of you have spoken to personally, you felt but I cannot leave this UMC of a thing, I cannot leave this other thing. But at the end of the day, what does it bring you? Like, you come and post it. What does it actually bring you? Post it. What does it bring you? The only thing it brings you is further division, disunity, and of course, breeding hate. And then that hate could actually proliferate beyond just the two of you, because I'll start looking at you like, what is going on? As a but I will also look at you differently. And you are actually opening space for yours to be insulted and castigated. Until we understand that it's not a crime to oppose, it's not a crime to quit a party, it's not a crime to actually call even those that you actually have divergent opinions when there is a collective action problem to come together to solve that problem for the common good. Then this is the perfect time to actually come together, put our egos aside, and have the conversation that is necessary to actually bring about meaningful change. But that which is not going to be hijacked by a particular group after that victory happened. Because people literally hijacked everything that happened in 2016 and they made it look like, of course, it is theirs. Nga bara nuto nyala, nga tama nuto nyala nga joko tonyai sabati. Bataro e banyimbanko kang, and that is what this regime continues to feed on. Turning around, telling people, but don't give them that benefit of the doubt. Let's direct our energies on the regime. If every opposition tolbe nga nyatili nyemasa kundala bam bam bam, yamra wolbe sabati laba. You are just strengthening the leadership. Imagine telling people that for your children to even get scholarship to go to school, they need to have NPP, party cards. I think Jame will be very pleased. Or probably some people will like, oh man, Sadibu, is it Bajahar or whatever? You probably need to stop insulting me or probably castigating me because of, Jammeh, you hate this person, you like this person. Some people said I am his son. Some people turn and say, Atondi Bamba Mas Mila Uncle. Some people would turn and say, oh yeah, UDP, this and that. It doesn't bother me. Because when NPP gets to a point that they're insulting me for asking them who killed the cops, then NPP has something to answer. If NPP is so frustrated to a simple question of who killed the cops that they could label, castigate, and of course, categorize people on things that they really know nothing about, then that is enough frustration on that political establishment. So all our energies need to be directed at these people who are hell-bent on already rigging the election. Election rigging that a ruling party in government that should create enabling environment for all Gambian women is now telling you that for you to get access to financial aid, you need to be a member of their political party, and you need to show that by a membership card, and turn around and told us different stories that the president said they have a 50 million. But of course, one of their women leaders said that it's going to come from the bank. Which bank will actually take money and of course be funding political events for, the NPP? Because we also know the biggest funders of the regime are the mafias, and these mafias are the ones benefiting from the mega government projects. Heavy fuel in the Gambia for NAWEC is actually supplied by one of the biggest funders of the NPP. Million wala kadia la kaboma sakunda la kodoto. A million will do the fana on the other way around into the NPP. We will use government to give you the contracts, and you will actually use the contract to fund our political events. And that in itself is corruption. Institutionalized corruption, and of course political manipulation of the system to actually give an additional advantage to the incumbent. Wale atine will take what they have over 50 million to give Gambian women. But Adam Baromi alonko 2017 tebe jakani mfanting olodun najang. Ito kontoli ko ite mo millionaire mo malong obata mintola. Within the first 5 years, Barrow came out to tell us that he has over 200 million in his account. I abonde mintola barola salary madiala, ala benefits madiala. Fengo fento ko de dino la barola obonde mintola. On top of it, let's come to December 2026. Probably he will actually give us a billionaire status. And then we have this Sane guy that is claimed to be either his nephew or whatever, flamboyantly living a luxurious life and becoming the biggest political propagandist of the NPP because his uncle or whatever relative is the president. For some, some person who was nowhere known in this country jump in to become a top millionaire and a big celebrity who has money and flamboyantly living a luxurious life from where that is basically how disgusting regimes, lead our people. Banko mi ya lon ko ala funding kele malla banko le mallo banko nyaton ko le malla fon ka sabati wo banko ka ni ko wali ko the 50-50 chance between life and death into the Mediterranean. Over 200 people died at sea when hundreds are already still waiting to actually see the next boat to actually get on and then leave. To a point that nobody knows how they're surviving the next minute. And of course, people are not safe in their homes. People are not safe at work. People are not safe in the streets. Who would want to live in a country like that? A state of insecurity is just something that nobody can imagine. And of course, we are now living in a jungle republic. Comme President Binum Kowahe Kumun Samuram Duma. Bodaje bandis yon binyumun na duma nyu duma jel lep lo mom. Yobuko nga tere nelaw sa kir kula mun mu ñew duma la jël lo mom yep yobuko bu ko nexé sa mu réalé la si nga dem liggéey ci bureau yi ñu ñew duma la ré la jël ay xaliss dem seen yoon waye nguur gi ñu ne ñom faalé wu ñooñu lolu dara ci du ci ñom seen wajuri ñoo leen nekk di jox xaliss ngeen di dem baako bo leen fa dé yena xam ñom lolu dara itéwu leen. The country is completely hijacked by the mafias. Oto opposition wala balafanto lu do bali ali do balafanto lu do ba dingoli atol lañi ñoo sabo ni ñoo fenko mam mo nafa fenna man Gambia nafa mam molu nafa. So the important thing is for you to come together and then come together for the collective good of this country and not for your individual aspirations. When and where we have all the necessary reforms put in place and there is a level playing field for everybody, then you can go about, pursuing your individual desires. Because what we seeked in 2016 has not been achieved. Everything was neglected. The reforms were completely neglected. And of course, it had become a government of the kakistocrats who were hell-bent on not helping to improve the lives and the livelihoods of Gambians, but their individual selves and their families. Where jobs have become, a barter trade between directors and then, of course, access to get employment is not through your education and qualifications, but on the basis of your political sycophancy on the regime. And then you become a political sycophant of the regime, and then you're actually giving a position. Through political sycophancy is how you're going to get a job. And then among those people, you see some of them who could not even, jump and say, oh yeah, they are presidential advisors. So we got to stop, and to stop those things, we must do them collectively. And we all know what our collective action problem is. It doesn't matter who becomes the leader of that. It doesn't matter to me who actually. The only thing that matters to me is the change. Either Dabo, either another person, either Lamin Sane, either Talib Ahmed Bensouda, either Swaibu Ture, either whoever, Lamin J Dabo. You know what? Gambia needs a reset, and that reset should be our collective action responsibility. And in doing so, we must stop castigating and ridiculing each other by coming together to understand that the regime people, the opposition ma mbenga na ngafo ko tonya nintil mo talabulu. But the nintol da malwe sonko la the regime the nyonyo songo kena rek wakolu len na haranda, nobody will say you are better at it all. Imagine people in the regime castigating people within UMC and another party is celebrating that. Or people in the regime insulting people within the UDP and another party celebrating that. What exactly is going on? Because am I lost in my own world or what? Political maturity demands of us to be tolerant, appreciative of the differences, and of course, be able to come to the table to discuss for the way forward for this country. Otherwise, mamela diamula jannade baraning kamme malu tema for the collective good. We will long to seek what we are seeking, and probably it will not come to reality. All right, ladies and gentlemen, I thank you very much for your time, and I hope that all that I see is we got to come together. All of us coming together to see that our problem is beyond you, and you. And therefore, you got to put your differences aside and see this country for its good. Tomorrow, whatever you seek, you can seek that mola kutawato, and nobody would stop you. But at the time, there would have been a 50+1, a new constitution, and of course, all the necessary reforms are being put in place. And then there is reasonable security put in place in the country, and of course, a flourishing economy. Banko economy alon ko ni wol da sama de tes konton ni wol konton te simana moro ali mira wolula ali efonya la nyim political nyo sabola na fatala ali efonya ka kuma tilembalo la fonyo mama mun na fa fenna. There are a lot of people who are not going to benefit anything from politics. They have no interest in politics, but of course they want the good for the country. And then when you see some people that tell you, oh look, you live away alkana molo but andal mandarajang. That is the dumbest intellectual comment that anybody would make. Do you know that people migrate with Gambia's problems? If you know your relatives and people who live outside of the country and the level of complaints and problems levied on them on a daily basis from the Gambia, you will not make such comments to people, because if the economy is flourishing and everybody is doing well, it is even going to help people who are not there to actually do well for themselves. Simply because every other day you have to solve other problems of your relatives, families, and close associates. And then people who sit there and say, Because some of you would dump your entire life, businesses, and of course needs. Oh, bye-bye, baby. Come on. All right, bye-bye. You go to mommy now. You dump all your problems on people, your relatives, and then you turn around. You go, welcome you falia ko moro alda malia kambe nungaje ko faling weke jang. No, welcome na mulu batani. Ola andaka for no kuro kele niwe NPP de moro. Eda rambaro ya kuro dila. Ha. This is what people got to understand. There are a lot of youngsters. Niaje funding kill fonko e bebe tala banta. Molka aje kulungo kupita moke me fata je ko hani ndebe siri nenka kulundola bado mimbena. Nimfana mbe kupila nga faje